Hi guys, welcome back to TESOL with Bahaa. Skill number 2, teacher talk. Another important skill for being a good English teacher is something called teacher talk. This means how you make your speech to match your students' understanding. Simply put, it means the level of teacher's speech. Let's break it down. Think about how you talk to different people in your life. For instance, if you're talking about, let's say, what you did last Friday, you tell this to three different people: a 5-year old, your father, and your best friend. You'd probably talk in different ways, right? Does that make sense? Okay. What kind of things would you tell a 5-year old? And how would you explain them? Now, when you talk to your father, what kind of details would you add or leave out in your talk? And when chatting with your best friend who knows almost everything about you, would you talk differently? In these cases, obviously, you might use different words, speak at a different level, and even use expressions that are unique to your friendship and your relationship. It's something you probably do naturally without even realizing it. I mean, it's natural and you go with it automatically. So, good teacher talk is similar to this natural way of speaking, but it takes some extra thought and practice. Honestly, nowadays, many new English teachers struggle with teacher talk. In the beginning, you might talk too quickly, use complicated language, or speak too slowly and simply. I have observed many teachers who plan great activities but then explain these activities in a ways that's way above or below the student's level. You remember the learner zones? But let's not just focus on mistakes we make. We all make mistakes, but what's important is to learn from our mistakes. Instead, let's discuss what good teacher talk actually means. When we talk about teacher talk, we are talking about several important qualities. Number one, repetition. It's repeating things to make them clear. Number two, using simpler grammar. Number three, using basic or simple words and vocabulary. Number four, using signal words or signpost expressions. This is to guide students. Number five, using examples that everyone understands, using common cultural reference. Number six, giving more details, that is, elaboration. Number seven, asking questions to check understanding. It means clarification questions. Now, let's take a closer look at each of these qualities. First up, we have repetition. Repetition simply means repeating something to make sure that the student understands it clearly. It's a key strategy in teaching language that many teachers pick up naturally over time. Additionally, when you are repeating something to help students grasp it better or to highlight its significance, you can use phrases like, "Let me say that again," or "in other words," or "in simple words." These phrases signal to students that you are restating something, you are repeating something. Moving on to the second quality, we have reduced or simpler grammatical forms. This means simplifying complex language elements to make them easy to understand. Experienced teachers often do this naturally, but new teachers might need to learn how to simplify things by using common tenses and removing unnecessary or confusing phrases and clauses. Next up, simplified vocabulary This one is pretty straightforward to understand, but it can be a bit tricky to put into practice. Basically, it means using words that you think your whole class is likely to understand. For example, let's say you are wondering if your students know the word occurrence. Maybe not, but they might understand happening instead. It's about choosing words that are more likely to be familiar to your students. Here is another aspect of teacher talk: signpost expressions. These are like road signs in a conversation. They are words or phrases like first, also, or for example. These show your students where you are in the discussion or how many points you have covered. They help students follow up and know what to expect next. Now, let's discuss using cultural references or examples that everybody understands. Sometimes teachers who are not used to teaching second language use references that students might not understand. It's like when let's say a grandfather talks about some specific thing that was around in 50s and you have no idea what he's talking about. So, it's important to consider your students' cultural knowledge and make sure your examples and references are something they can relate to. Another useful skill I like to use when I notice students are struggling to understand is elaboration. It's more than just repeating things. With elaboration, you take a step back, slow down, and explain things in more details. You might include definitions and examples to make the information clear. For example, if I gave you the word moose and you didn't know what it meant, I would elaborate by giving you a definition and showing you some examples. Have you noticed that most language teachers repeat things? They love to give more details. After all, they are all language teachers. Now, let's get into the final skill I want to discuss: asking questions and providing clarification. Here's what it means: you ask questions to check what your students have understood. If someone has misunderstood something, it's your job to correct or to clarify it. And here's a quick tip: when you ask questions, make sure to give students enough time to respond. Sometimes, a bit of silence can be a powerful tool to engage students and get them participating. And here's another general tip for you: pay attention to your students' eyes. If they look puzzled or confused, it's a sign that you might need to change your teaching approach. So, don't underestimate the importance of simply looking into your students' eyes. In the next video, you will learn one last valuable skill to help you teach English. That is scaffolding. Thanks for tuning in.